The Kingdom of Norway is a country in northern Europe which occupies the western coast of the Scandinavian peninsula. The first inhabitants of Norway came from modern-day Germany 12,000 years ago. In the year 872 AD, Harald Fairhair united the petty kingdoms of Norway into one and became the first king of a united Norway. The Viking Age lasted from the 8th to the 11th centuries AD and was characterized by great expansion. Viking seafarers explored most of the known world. Christianity came to Norway towards the end of this period. After the Black Death, which devastated the population of Norway, Norway entered into a series of alliances with neighboring Sweden and Denmark, which led to the Kalmar Union. Norway remained tied to Denmark for a total of 436 years, which had a profound effect on the culture and language of Norway. Later, Norway became a part of Sweden, while the old Norwegian provinces of Iceland, Greenland, and the Faroe Islands remained part of Denmark. At this point, Norway declared independence from Sweden, but eventually agreed to enter a personal union with Sweden. Finally, in 1905, Norway separated peacefully from Sweden and became an independent country. Norway claimed neutrality in both world wars, but was invaded by Germany in World War II. Norwegian military resistance to this surprise attack lasted 2 months, the second largest of any country invaded by the Germans. Following the war, Norway established many of its socialist policies and joined NATO in 1949. Today, Norway remains outside of the European Union and is one of the most liberal countries in the world. Norway has a population of just under 5 million, and rich oil, fish, hydropower, and mineral resources. 5 exceptional things about Norway. Number 1. Norwegians invented aerosol spray and the cheese cutter, and are largely responsible for the development of skiing, which they first began to do 7,000 years ago. Number 2. Norwegians have the second highest GDP per capita in the world. Number 3. Norwegian women were granted voting rights in 1913 and today are ranked just behind Icelandic women in economic and political gender equality. Number 4. Norway maintained first place in the world in the UNDP Human Development Index for 6 consecutive years, narrowly losing that status to Iceland in the year 2007. And number 5, Norway is beautiful.
Vestland. Jeg lengter inn til Ryfylket i kveld. Lufta så ren og klar. Livet sender blomster svart. Legger vårt teppe ut. Sommarsider kan du sjå. Nå blir voien blank og blå. Glitrende som krystall. Jeg lengter til et Vestland, naturkreftenes Vestland. Jeg lengter inn til Ryfylket i kveld. Høst med storm som driver et hav. Riv deg med i krefters kav. Stille og etter storm er sakral. Første snør mjuke ut. speile mitt sinn. Til vi bruker å fere den beste plass i verden. Jeg lengter hit til Finnøy i kveld.
If you travel to Norway, you'll find that the majority of the people there speak English quite well. Certainly anyone you would come into contact with as a tourist will have no problem conversing with you, thanks to the excellent language education that they have in Norway. However, I wouldn't suggest that this makes it useless to learn a bit of the Norwegian language. In fact, the standard form of the language is not very difficult at all for a speaker of English to learn. It's a really lovely language, and as an added bonus, Swedes and Danes will be able to understand you as well. You won't be able to understand them until you get pretty good at Norwegian, though, so that can lead to some interesting situations. Just to give you an idea of what Norwegian sounds like, I'm adding in about 30 seconds of an excellent resource for learning Norwegian. The book and CD set is called Teach Yourself Norwegian, and it moves quickly and is very easy to use.
This is how we say it.
Hva heter du?
What are you called?
Hvor kommer du fra?
Where do you come from?
Du norsk?
Are you Norwegian?
Du engelsk?
Are you English?
Jeg heter.
I am called.
Han kommer fra Oslo.
He comes from Oslo.
Hei, Sue.
Hi, hello, Sue.
Ha det.
Bye bye.
Jeg vil gjerne reise til Norge.
I would like to travel to Norway.
An interesting thing about Norway is that for such a small country, it has a huge amount of linguistic diversity. Not only does it have several minority languages, such as the Sami languages related to Finnish, even the majority language, Norwegian, is not really a single unified tongue. There are many dialects, which in some cases can be so different from one another that they are barely mutually intelligible. For example, one dialect may be more closely related to Swedish than it is to another Norwegian dialect. There is a long history behind how this has been handled over time, but nowadays there are basically two main versions of Norwegian, Nynorsk and Bokmål. And diversity in Norway goes beyond linguistics. In addition to the ethnic Norwegians, there are the indigenous Sami people of the north, who traditionally were strongly linked with reindeer herding, although today only 10% of the Sami follow this lifestyle. There are also many groups of immigrants in Norway, and even ethnic Norwegians aren't all the stereotypically blonde-haired, blue-eyed type. The Norwegian culture is difficult to define. On one hand, the people are very highly educated, but on the other, this has done nothing to diminish their love for some of the simpler aspects of life, and for the fantastic nature that surrounds them. They have somehow gained a reputation for being cold and closed, but in reality, many of the people there are extraordinarily welcoming and friendly. And for such a largely happy nation, it may seem strange that they have become so famous for their heavy metal music, excellent as some of it may be. One stereotype that may be a bit truer than the others is that the Norwegians are slightly crazy. Their affinity as a nation for extreme sports would seem to support this, as would the way they can be seen swimming when it's uncomfortably cool out. And some elements of the national cuisine, such as fermented or rotten fish, are completely impossible for most to understand. Regardless, the Norwegians have done well for themselves. 1,000 years ago, they were a nation of plundering Vikings, and today they rank at the top of the Human Development Index. They have, in the space of just over 100 years, become independent, valiantly resisted and later recovered from a 5-year invasion, and gone from being one of the poorer countries in Europe to one of the richest in the world. They have, by and large, managed to balance socialism with capitalism, while avoiding oppression or rampant abuse of the system. And despite their thorough integration into the world community, they have strongly maintained their complex identity as Norwegians.